Okay, so Andrew, you're on, so we're going to go ahead and give this a whirl. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Littleton Conservation Commission meeting. It's October 22, year is 2024. We are having some technical glitches tonight with some of our members, so we ask the participants to kind of please hang in there with us. We do ask that if you would like to speak, that with your name that's presented, that you put your full name in, first and last name, please. And if you want to be heard, just signify by raising your hand. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have 2 minutes to approve. The first is we're going to review September 24th of 2024. So it's a lot of 2/4s. Does anyone have any omissions or corrections to this draft? If not, if I can have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that can you guys hear me, by the way? Is it a little better? Oh,
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, something's going on with the internet connection, but hopefully it stays good. So a motion that the commission approve the meeting minutes of September 24th, 2024 as printed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
Okay.
Roll call vote. Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Excellent. Okay, we're going to move on to October 8th, 2024. We have 3 pages of draft minutes. I just have one on the last page where it talks about the presentation at town meeting, says that I will be doing it. Chase will be doing it with me, so I want the minutes to reflect that. Especially seeing he's not here.
I mean, that's did we discuss that at the meeting? I'm totally comfortable with you wanting to make sure Chase is known that he's. But if we didn't talk about it at the meeting, I don't know.
No, well, we talked about it. I just don't remember that he remembered. So
that's as long as I couldn't recall if we discussed him joining up there. That's fine with me.
Yeah, we definitely talked about it.
Okay, great.
Do we have a motion to approve? If anyone doesn't have any omissions or amendments.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of October 8th, 2024, with the addition of noting Chase will be speaking along with Sarah.
Second.
Roll call vote. Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Administrative discussions. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add to this? Okay, that is shocking. Okay, let's go ahead and start with request for minor modification, 24 Deer Road, Mass DEP 204-0884, U48-4-0. Amy, can you help us with that?
Mr. Gilpatrick is coming in,
Okay.
but he's muted right now. There he goes. Did you want to go ahead and, yeah.
Yep, if you can hear us, please go ahead.
Oh, this is interesting.
Dana, can you hear us? Okay, so we can't hear you. So we don't show you as muted, so it might just be on your end.
In the meantime, I think this will be fairly quick. Having a hard time sharing, but I can tell you that he has an open order of conditions right now, but he has a big pine kind of very close to the lake shore that got struck by lightning and is split and is clearly needs to come down. So we were thinking, since it's so close to the water, Tim and I can't do administrative approval. So we're thinking just do it as a minor mod to the open order of conditions, after which he'd go ahead and get his certificate of compliance.
Okay. That sounds like a great plan of action. Do we have someone to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that the commission allow the minor modification for the order of conditions at 26 Deer Run Road.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Ed,
Ed Foltz, aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
and myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next discussion, which is BPAC Boardwalk connection, of Two Brothers Trail to Lakeshore Drive. Amy, do you want to kick us off with that? And then we also have a letter that has been submitted of record from Sarah Foss, who is in a butter.
Yes, I think Jerry is here to talk about it, and I can, you all saw the letter, so let me know if you want me to read it or not. It's up on the webpage.
Yep.
Or Jerry can go ahead and lay out. This is just sort of a informational, hasn't been a filing on this yet.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and start.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Amy. This is Jerry Cavallo. I represent the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We're here today to talk about getting some guidance on design requirements for a boardwalk connecting Two Brothers Trail to Lakeshore Drive. I sent you guys a read ahead, which has the background, scope, and everything, but I see we have very limited time. So let me just skip the background and boil it down to one thing. The town now owns a piece of property at the corner of Lakeshore Drive and Aspen Street, which will enable us to do a ADA compliant boardwalk all the way from the town beach to Two Brothers Trail, which is on the New England Forestry Foundation property. This trail is talked about in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, as well as the Open Space and Recreation Plan. And I talked to the select board, was a month ago today, and they approved the use of the property for building a trail contingent upon agreement of CONSCOM, the ADA compliant group in town, and any other board that has some sort of jurisdiction on it. So I thought I'd come to you first because there is some thoughts that it's a wetland, and we may have to have a boardwalk that has certain characteristics that minimize our impact on that wetland. So that's all I really had at this point, unless you want me to go into more detail about how the town acquired the property or anything else. I can, if I can share my screen, I'll put up the picture of what the area we're talking about just for the rest of the audience.
That would be great.
Okay, let's see. So Amy, are you seeing the map right now?
Nope.
Okay, so I got to go somewhere and share screen, I guess.
Yeah, there should be a green.
Oh, there we go. Share. And click that and share. And we are in business, I think. So, Amy, can you see the map?
Yep.
Do my cursor
Yes.
on? Okay.
Yep.
So this is where my little cursor is here. That's Long Lake Beach. This is Lakeshore Drive. And Lakeshore Drive at the corner of Aspen Street. There is a section of town property. Actually, this is all town property from the Smadback development all along here between the road and the lake. And this part was in contention. And as part of a lawsuit, the town got ownership of this in 2020 to build a trail across. And this is what we're looking at doing at this point. You can see the red line. We'd like to do most of the way is probably going to be a boardwalk. That all depends on what we find there. But we'd like to make it an ADA compliant boardwalk so people can come all along here and come to this point. And the criticality of this point here is Two Brothers Trail ends right on where the rock wall is here. And back in 1998, when we built Two Brothers Trail, we anticipated going all the way to Town Beach, but we were held up over the dispute over this property. So not only will this boardwalk be ADA compliant and allow people to come park at Town Beach, come down Lakeshore Drive and come out and have a view from this point. But we'll also allow through hikers to go here and all the way over to Neff and wherever Neff leads you to. See any other pictures? So I just put up some other pictures of places where they had a boardwalk through a wetland. This is what we were starting at as a baseline. The old Jim O'Neill corrugated pipe, and of course, it would have to have the kickers on each side, like it does over off Route 2A. Route 2A. And this is just another shot off of Google Earth. Actually, this is one Amy gave me because it has the lot lines on it that shows a little more contour of what it looks like getting over to where we're going. So at this point, I think the advice we got from our conservation agent was to come to the board and say, this is what we're thinking of doing. What is our next step to make this happen?
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Cavallo. What I'd like to do is to open up any questions to the commissioners. And Susan Silverberg, I see that you have your hand up. Protocol for us is that we'll go through question and answer through the committee members first, and then right to our attendees as well. So commissioners, questions?
Can you speak to the comment in the letter that there are other trails already in place, and that to put this boardwalk in place would result in damage to the area that might not be needed?
Okay, that request was to me. Yes, part of the lawsuit, the property owner was to give us an access around the back side of the property to connect to Two Brothers Trail. That's not advantageous for a couple of reasons. One, it's very steep, so it would never be ADA compliant. Two, it's not town property, it's the landowner's property, and we're looking at something for perpetuity here, not just short term. And also, I guess I would have to go back when we worked the last time with the Conservation Commission for when we cut the trees at Oak Hill for Lookout Rock. There was a lot of concern amongst people about us, Conscom, cutting down trees, but there was no view of Lookout Rock back in 2007. So the time I was with the Conservation Trust, and we got together with you guys and we decided that the overall good of cutting down the trees to have a view was worth the, as people were saying, there's birds' nests in the trees and other things. So I have to say, when I go by Oak Hill, the parking lots are always packed. And I think a lot of it has to do with people like a view, that like to go up there and look around. So that's the idea of making this a trail that will be used by folks because it is attractive. It has views and it'll be easy to access rather than having to go up that steep trail in the back. Over.
Gotta say, from my perspective, we've been doing a lot of people asking to cut trees, and to say the trees going away is offset by our pleasure and enjoyment of the area. I'm becoming more and more inclined toward supporting the animals than supporting us from that perspective. So I assume when you do finally come, you're going to tell us how many trees you're going to want to cut, things like that.
Well, I mentioned trees because Oak Hill had trees. I don't think we're going to cut any trees on this. The concern of the landowners and folks around there is the frogs and other things that live in the wetland.
Okay.
Well, we would avoid cutting any trees. I don't think there's a need to cut any trees for this.
And the impact to the frogs and other animals in the wetlands?
Well, any of the wetland trails we have now, we build trails and we try to minimize that. And that's why I'm looking at what is the least impact, not necessarily promising anybody we're going to have no impact.
Mm-hmm.
What is this area? I mean, I guess we should go out there at some point and take a look, but you keep saying wetlands. Is it shoreline or is there wetlands in this area? Are you putting a boardwalk through a wet area? What?
So Amy, I should let you talk to that because you've been there more than anybody, right?
Yeah, depending on exactly where the boardwalk is, there would be probably some sort of scrubby shrub that needs to be cut, part of which could or could not be wetland, and then partially through either kind of low emergent wetlands or into the water itself, depending on how far out it gets pushed.
Okay.
So I imagine that would all need to be calculated in the filing.
Has anyone done any wetlands flagging out there at all or discovery in that area in the past?
No wetlands have been flagged to
Okay.
date. The easement is at least almost entirely have iron rods. It's been staked. Although obviously there's an arc to it.
Okay. I certainly agree with Kyle in terms of at some point having a site walk to be able to walk start to finish what we're looking at. And I recognize it's very dry here, so it may not be from from other people looking at this, it may not look to support wetlands, but we know that that area is wet. Any other commissioners have any other questions before we open it up?
And just quickly, if you did a site walk, would you want to do it before the filing? Think about that.
Commissioners, what are your thoughts? Because that could steer this, that if it looks like it's going to be impactful, the applicant may not be in their best interest.
I think that would be helpful to take a look before we actually consider a formal application, just so we can get an idea of what's out there and how there'd be any impacts.
Mm.
And that certainly is up to the applicant as well. So even with our indications, if they still want to go forward, that is still their right. So is that something, Jerry, that you would like for us to try and coordinate at some point to do a site walk?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay. All right. If we don't have any other questions from commissioners, I'd like to go into the attendees. And Susan, if you'd like to, I believe there you go. If you can unmute. And I'm going to move you.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep. And now you're in as a panelist.
Okay, so I just hit.
So,
Gotcha.
yep. Great. So if you can introduce yourself and where you reside, that would be great. Where'd you go?
Just muted.
Hold on one second, Susan.
And Jerry, could you maybe stop screen sharing?
So Susan, if you could unmute yourself, you're in the muted, so both your microphone and camera are off.
Okay. Can
There
hear
you
me
go.
Now?
Perfect.
All right. Excellent. Susan Silverberg. My property abuts the proposed path, and it is definitely wetlands.
Yeah.
My
Could
first
you,
question-
as part of order, Susan, could you just state your residence, please?
Oh, 2 Aspen Road.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
My first question is, does this proposal require permitting by the state under CMR 310? Because this is a great pond, and the proposal would substantially alter the shoreline of the Great Pond and require cutting quite a bit of vegetation to get through to Lakeshore Drive.
So
That would have to all be part of the applicant's due diligence.
And that has to go through the state, right?
If it's a Chapter 91, it would have to go through the state, yeah.
What's a Chapter 91?
I'm not sure what you cited, but you mentioned it, a
There
great
was
pond.
I was reading a Commonwealth of Massachusetts regulation about constructions along the shore of great ponds, in which they had very specific requirements in terms of applying for approval, putting out a notice of intent, public announcements and meetings about it.
Mhm.
And it would seem to me that this is in fact under that law, because it is a substantial modification of a shoreline of a great pond. And it requires cutting of vegetation well within the limits of the shoreline of Great Pond. It's quite a bit of vegetation, actually, to get through it. Not to mention it's an area that's, if those boardwalks that were being shown, which are down on the very close to the ground, this is an area that's regularly used by turtles to access for nesting. Some of those snappers are a good 24 inches off the ground. So that's going to need to be, if you're putting in a proposal, that has to be taken into consideration.
And Susan, those are great points, and those are things that would certainly come up through a site walk. And from my experience, a lot of Chapter 91s are people that are also constructing piers, docks, and having, as you say, significant or even minor alterations to the shorelines. And that's something that we can look into as well. Commissioners, do you have questions for Ms. Silverberg? Or any other comments?
I don't think I have a question. I mean, she's right about Chapter 91. That will be something that Mr. Cavello would have to look into, that permitting process as well. So on top of our NOI, you would have to file for Chapter 91. But I don't know. I feel like we're very in the preliminary stages of this. I need to see this area before I really make too much more of a judgment. Did you say 24 inches of snap? Like I know.
Oh yeah, those big snappers, when they stand up on their legs,
Okay.
they're a good 18 to 24 inches. And you
never
can't
seen
leave
that stuff.
something that they're going to bump into. The other thing that the commissioners, I feel, should be aware of is the fact that this area, along with a lot of other creatures, is a shelter and spawning area for amphibian that's called the leopard frog. This is an animal that's of concern according to the Massachusetts Department of Fish and Wildlife, also according, surprisingly, to the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Agency, which for some reason studied these frogs. They're diminishing throughout their habitat. They're more and more places where they were found, where they no longer are found. They definitely are here. I see them all the time. And I think those things need to be taken into consideration when you do the walkthrough. You're not going to see them because it's out of season. One thought that I had thinking about this, well, there's two things. First of all, you can build it ADA compliant, but once they get to the rock wall, they can't go anywhere anyway. But secondly, that it's without knowing what's really there, how do you know what you need to do to protect what's there? And we have no idea at this point what's really there. To find that out, you would need to get, like, I don't know, a couple of graduate students who wanted to take it on as a project and do a year-long study of this place. But you can go there now and you're not going to see anything because it's almost November. And most of the animals that use this area are either hiding in the mud, sleeping, or they're the dragonflies and the damselflies, they're gone. Or they're perching birds who've migrated. It's going to look dead.
Yep, and those are great points for us to consider for sure.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Commissioners, what would you like to do? So I think
I think there's one other hand, Sarah. Martha Folsom.
Martha, let me move you over to panelist.
Or
Should I
yeah,
unmute
There you
myself?
go.
yeah. I just let her talk without moving over.
Okay. So Martha, if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be great. Martha, if you can unmute yourself.
There you go.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, if you could introduce yourself and put an
Certainly.
address.
I'm sorry, I thought I was unmuted. This is John Folsom, Sarah, and Martha and I live at 21 Lakeshore Drive, right across the street from the lake. And just wanted to say I would support leaving this area undisturbed. We have so little areas that are untouched around the lake. With the trails that we do have and the conservation land and the Prouty Woods, there is a couple of connections to the Two Brothers Trail now. I don't believe they're ADA compliant, but of course, neither is the Two Brothers Trail. It's a delightful walk, but I have a hard time imagining that the big payoff of this proposed boardwalk is all that special from somebody who parks over at the town beach. And either walks along the parkland, and there's beautiful vistas from the parkland already. In fact, when you go to this site, you'll see between Aspen Road and Birch Road, right along the shoreline there, it's a big wide open spot. It's kind of the big payoff. It's a beautiful view, but it would not be enhanced by this boardwalk. I think it's very important for us to consider leaving undisturbed areas alone as trails that are opened along the way, with people walking their dogs and jumping off the trail and getting into trouble and chasing anything that moves. It's just going to destroy this area and leave less for the wildlife.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Folsom?
Thank you, John. I was just curious, has the association discussed this project at all?
Jerry actually appeared at our meeting a couple of months ago, which we were happy to receive him. And it's a mixed response. Some of us are very supportive of a trail that goes all the way around and links up the entire lake, sort of like Walden Pond. It would have to be, of course, a hybrid because we need a bridge across the northern tip. But that's something that's a long-range dream. But again, our concerns also exist for the wildlife, and as much use as Long Lake gets with the beach and boaters and fishermen, we have to respect the wildlife, the birds, the animals, the insects. Even they're running out of space.
Thank you. So we do have to, because this was just a discussion item and we do have hearings that we have to take on tonight. So I would leave this up to the commissioners and also to Mr. Cavallo as well, to taking this input that you've had tonight, also referencing Chapter 91, and that you may have to do a wetlands alternative analysis, and how this would, obviously, if it is in fact in wetlands, we'd have to look at a waiver as well. I would encourage you to perhaps step back if that's what the commissioners think, and make sure that you're prepared to go through all this process, which would be, I believe, lengthy, prior to the commissioners trying to all meet and walk the tour of the pathway. So I would defer to the commissioners of what they would like to do at the present time.
I'm not sure there's anything for us to do right now, is there? I mean, the requester is going to have to figure out how they want to proceed, if they want to proceed, and like you said, do all this research steps that have to get done up front, right?
Okay. Any other commissioners have inputs?
I agree with Ed. That sounds like the right thing to go forward with.
Okay. So, Mr. Cavallo, while there are times that we do preemptively go out and do site walks, especially as we know that we're entering winter for some of the projects as well, but I don't know that it's in our best time interest right now to try and gather kind of everyone together to find a time to go walk there, knowing these hurdles that you have to be able to present to us. But I'm just one vote, so whatever the commissioners would like to do.
Yeah,
That's the point where the commissioners say something.
I think you're right, Sarah. I think there's a fair amount of research, and like I mentioned, that needs to be done before this would come in front of us. I'm usually open to having a site walk before we receive an application, but there's a lot of unknowns here between the wetland delineation in Chapter 91, any sort of species that are out there that you're hearing from abutters that could be protected or need protection.
Okay.
I don't see us building this over the winter either, so I don't know about you, Mr. Cavallo, if you're trying to push this to get built this calendar year or not, but that's going to be a pretty tough process at this point.
I know, we've been working on this since 1998, so we're very patient. So it's just an odd thing because BPAC is also a town commission. So typically, if I was a landowner, I would go off and hire somebody to do all these things, a wetlands consultant, but all we can really do, we're an advisory board to the select board. We'll go to the select board and say, hey, is there any money around that we can hire somebody to do these things? Our impetus is that, especially now, is that, at the last town meeting, we approved the MBTA Communities Act or whatever, which essentially adds over 1,000 multifamily units to this town for people who will not have large backyards to walk in. So the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee got energized a little bit over this and said, we got to lead turn this. We've got to start finding places. If we're going to invite all these people to town, which the town did by making this vote, we've got to find a place for them to do their recreation and go out for a walk.
We appreciate that, and we can always encourage them to be good land stewards and help with some of the trails that are existing as well. So we're going to go ahead and carry on. We appreciate your time, but we do have kind of a tight schedule. So thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the abutters input as well. We're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to do a request for extension because Mr. Raffi is still on. It's 0 Lake Drive, also known as 12 Ivy Road, Mass DEP 204-0929, parcel U12-21-0. My understanding is that, well, actually, Amy, I'll let you present this, that the permit has expired, but that they'd already started. So looking for an extension.
Yeah, exactly. This was for a single family house, and they had started the construction of, I guess it's the wall for the septic system, although it's been quiet for a while, and the permit would have expired this past May, which is always kind of a gray area when you have something that's going under construction. So I don't know if Mr. Raffi can hear us or if he can unmute so we can hear him. I know he's having some technical difficulties earlier.
So Mr. Raffi, if you can unmute, that would be great. Amy, what was the date of the extension? It was a few months ago. I mean, the expiration, pardon me.
I don't have the date. It would have been May 2024.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. All I'm asking for is an extension on this permit. What happened was I tried to sell the property and I had no interest in buyers for the property. So that's when the permit had actually expired. And all I'm asking for is an extension on the permit so that I can continue, and I'm going to build the house on it myself. So all I'm asking for is a extension on the permit.
Okay.
Now,
Amy, a question: is the site in good operation, good management in terms of erosion control?
I haven't been out there in a little while, but there was someone working just next door, so we were in and out. The erosion controls were still up. There had been a little bit of a issue with discharge that actually did not make it to the wetlands, and that was taken care of.
Right.
How long of an extension are we talking about here? What are we going through? Just the 1 year thing?
Yeah, I would not go past one.
No, well, okay. I agree with you, Sarah. I guess I was
Right, yeah.
Mr. Raffi. I thought you knew.
I would make a motion, Mr. Raffi, that we will give you a 1-year extension from the date of your expiration. So if that was in May, you'll have it extended till May.
Thank you very much.
If the commission so wishes to do that, that's my motion. If somebody wants to second it.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right. Roll call vote. Ed.
Ed Foltz, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
And I don't see Michael anymore. Is Michael?
He was getting in and out of the car. So, oh, Michael's back.
He's
Yeah.
back.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. And myself, aye. It is unanimous.
So, Mr. Raffi, that is subject to, so you have your extension, but we have to make sure that your site is in good order. So, before you proceed with that. So if you want to just connect with Amy or Tim, that would be great.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Okay, we are late and we're going to move on to our 7:45 public meeting request for determination of applicability. 3 Sarah Indian Way, U 25-12-0 bylaw waiver required, rebuilding of an existing structure.
And this is Jay Dolan, who is in the audience, but he just declined to be promoted to panelist. Jay, if you wanted to talk, you should allow that. There he goes.
So Jay, of reference, so you need to display full name for Zoom, and then also, if you'd like to speak, to introduce yourself with your residence as well.
Warren J. Dolan, 3 Sarah Indian Way, Littleton, Mass.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you'd like to do, please?
Oh, what there is there's it's on the pond, okay, and it was a screened-in porch that was existing when I bought the property approximately 10 years ago. And the person I've been dealing with is Amy, and I showed her all the picture of the rod. It's, it was probably built maybe 20 years ago, and the structure is a 14 or 13 and a half by 20 screened-in porch that's approximately 50 feet or 40 feet from the water line, and it's all rotted. I'm a grandfather. I have actually 17 grandkids. And when they're down there, it just became an unsafe unit. So actually, I took it upon myself to start taking it apart. And I took pictures as I was taking it apart of all the rot and the decay. And it was just filled with ants. And I showed the building commissioner it also, and he understood why I was asking to rebuild it. It was kind of obvious it wasn't safe. And so that's what I'm looking for, a permit to rebuild it. The same size, same structure.
Amy, do we have any photos of the actual site?
Unfortunately, they did not. Do you see the plan here? And unfortunately, the photos of the deck did not make it into the filing itself.
Okay. I guess the question is, are the footings in the same place?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. They are. It didn't have footings before. That's one of the reasons I'm rebuilding it. It had railroad ties that were just stuck into the dirt, and that's one of the things that caused the problems. It's a fail after probably 15 or 20 years. They all rotted out. So our design is to, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which way to look at it. I did talk to the building commissioner, and there's a lot of ledge there. So I told him it was the footings that were being put in there, drilled down as far as we can get it. I mean, dug down as far as we can. Then we hit solid ledge, and then we're going to drill the ledge and pin the ledge with 1 foot sonotubes, okay, which is the proper way of building. I am a builder, so I do a lot of things, and it's the proper way. It's a much safer and better way to build this. And with this, we've already have put all the hay bales up, and we're aware. I live there, so it's my property. I'm very, very aware of, how important the shoreline is. I own the shoreline, so we've been very, very careful of anything we've done there.
Amy, have you been out to the site?
Yes, like when this first all came up. So he'd actually, not knowing he needed a permit, had started tearing down the porch and rebuilding it when we said you need a permit. And you'll also notice that part of this is also while he's in front of you guys to get the dock into compliance, if the commission so agrees.
Are there commissioners that would like to go out and take a peek?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see the site.
Yeah.
Worthwhile.
I like the process that he's describing. That makes absolute sense to me. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how many we're talking and how much spoil we're creating while we're doing this, but it sounds like the right process.
Okay. All right, when would be a good time? So for the applicant, what the commissioners are requesting is to come out and see the site, and then that way they would be able to make their educated determination of that. So commissioners, I will leave it up to you to schedule. The next meeting is November 12th, so it would be helpful to have commissioners out prior to November 12th. Somebody want to throw a date or time out?
What is the property owner? How's their availability? I mean, I personally, the middle of the day has always worked better for me. But as we get into fall, my evenings will be a little bit more flexible. The daylight won't be, but my time will be.
I'm very flexible to you. I work locally. I work in Acton, so I'm always within 5 miles of the property. I'm looking at the pictures. Unfortunately, the pictures of the existing structure were the most important thing that showed all the rotted lumber and the decay and all that stuff. What I think Amy has on the screens is for the secondary thing that she said, while we're doing this, she says there's new rulings about getting permitted for docks. I guess a lot of the people on Fort Pond or Long Pond or whatever, I guess we all have to get permits now to have docks. That dock there was an existing dock back 15 to 50. Well, when I bought the property.
And I agree. Amy did disclose that unfortunately those other pictures were left out of the slide deck that she has. And so that the docking system is for everyone in the Commonwealth. It's not just Littleton. Correct. So coming back to commissioners, is there a time that you'd like to meet out on site?
During the day is best for me.
I can't do during the day, but I can do the weekend or 5 o'clock like we did the other day.
Okay, so perhaps we can do 2. It sounds like Kyle and Michael can do middle of the day.
I would be with Ed, 5 o'clock and after during the week.
Okay, let's go ahead and just throw 2 out for the applicant.
It doesn't matter. Like I said, I'm local, so it's important to me to get this over with.
Okay, Kyle, Michael, Ed, Andrew.
I can do really any day next week. This week would be difficult, but any day next week's all right.
Don't forget we have town meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting, I think, was it Kyle and Ed on, was it Wednesday or Thursday? I forget now.
You'll have to remind me on that one because I don't.
Wednesday the 30th at 6.
All right. Well, then that leaves next week will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday's Halloween. I don't know if that makes a difference.
I'm a little old for trick or treating.
Right, come on. So Kyle and Michael,
I didn't
you're
wanna
you're during the day. Let's choose a
Yeah.
date, and then Ed and Andrew, an evening or weekend.
Let's see. Next week is a little crazy with meetings and town meeting. Unless
Friday would be the only day next week with everything that's already on.
Well, you can look at the
Yeah.
week after too, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah. Michael, I'm available Thursday or Friday at noon, the 31st of the 1st, or we could push it to the following week.
Why don't how about if we pick Friday, do the first?
Friday the 1st.
Okay, so we
Do
have,
it on November 1.
yep, so we have one for November 1 at noon. And then Ed and Andrew, you looking at the following week?
let's see, Ed, would November 6th at like 5:10 work for you?
November
I will
6th.
point out there's a social event Wednesday at 5, which I think I told you guys about at Dirigible.
I'll be there.
So November 6th at 10 after 5.
Sure.
Okay. So Jay, tentatively, well, not tentatively, we've got it posted for Friday, November 1st at noon. And then November 6th, right after work at 5:10.
Okay,
Okay, great.
so
Thank
there's two groups to the meeting?
Yes, yep,
Okay,
that would be great.
all right.
And then with your permission, we would go ahead and move you on to the next meeting, which is November 12th.
Yep,
Okay, great. Thank you. Have a great evening.
thank you.
Yep.
And this was
Okay,
for
it's
12.
now 8:20. We're going to go ahead and open the 8 p.m. continued public hearing, 161 Tehadawon. Is there a Mass DEP number yet?
Yes, there is. No comments.
Okay. This does require a bylaw waiver and continued discussion on the enforcement order, installation of a septic system, and restoration of cut trees. Amy, you had something about an additional tree, and yep. Alexander, you're on mute, so if you want to unmute, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. Alexander Essman, 161 Tehadawon Road. And I have Jack joining as well, who's been helping with the septic plans.
Okay, you want to bring us up to date?
Yes, Jack,
can
do you
I-
want to start?
Yeah, can I share my screen?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so there has been a slight change in the septic design since the last meeting. We received Neshoba Board of Health comments, I think either the day before or the day of the last conservation hearing. The change was that we pull the poly barrier in from 15 feet to 10 feet and regrade that back slope from 2-to-1 to a 3-to-1 slope, which actually will be conservation wise a lot better, a little bit less steep for replanting grass, sorry. Other than that, the plan has stayed the same. Alex, if you want, I did add the other stuff to the second page of this.
I'll pull it up because I have the full
Okay.
deck, but
All right.
I guess before I go to the tree replanting. I
Okay.
would-
Any questions on the septic part of things?
And I'll point out that it's not actually it's not the septic system that needed the waiver. It was the replanting of the trees.
Oh, that sounds good. Go ahead, Alexander.
Yes, great. Let me pull up the PDF here. So I was able to have Tim and Amy come to the property right after our last meeting. We did a walkthrough together and figured out a couple different places that we can put the trees because there are other plantings in the back here, as well as places that we can add some more shrubs and trees together. So I put a summary together here with a little bit more of a colorful map, given the details that we talked about. in summary, the one, not big, but the one change, which Sarah just mentioned, is the recommendation to remove a Norway maple that is pretty far into decay and within the 50-foot buffer zone. So I'll start with that and then work my way backwards on the plantings. So this is the picture of the tree, which was right here, if you can see at the bottom here, within the 50-foot zone. And as you can see in the picture here, this is probably about 12 feet up. The middle of the tree is very exposed and clearly rotting. The risk is that this could fall into some of the new plantings that we have designed on the, we'll call it the bottom part of the map, and might pose a risk to taking out what we're putting in. Questions so far? So with that in mind, we added more trees anyways, but we added more trees on this side of the plantings to make up for the Norway that's being removed. In summary, this would now include 14 trees and 7 shrubs, which is an addition from before. We also discussed adding an informal rock wall. There's already a loose one there right around the 50-foot kind of grass line. And so we talked about putting in a more formal wall that would hold the no-mow line and protect that a little bit more, as well as allocating about 500 square feet to be a truly naturalized area. It's a lot of dirt, overgrowth, lots of kind of stick piles. We talked about making that more with the shrubs, also a no-mow area. So adding that into the plan to add some more greenery and room for the bunnies. And then adding the additional trees up here, 2 additional apple trees further up into the property to, yes, add more trees, add more pollinating, add more leaves, and get some more growth. Amy, anything I missed?
Then you've got the 3-year monitoring period.
Oh, yes. So the other add from our last conversation was adding the commitment to the 3-year survivability and replacement as needed, as well as a commitment to removing invasive species. There's some creepy vines that are going up some of the trees. Amy and Tim pointed out some best practices for what to be removed and cleaned up, which would be a great opportunity as I'm going through with all the plantings. And that's it.
Okay, commissioners have any questions?
I think this sounds great. Just the one question I have, the naturalized area, the 35 by 30, this is all going to be done after the septic area. I don't think I need to see it overlaid. I'm just kind of curious on where those, where's the informal rock wall line compared to the limit of work for the septic?
Oh, it's pretty far away.
Okay.
Jack, do you mind sharing your screen? So the rock wall is basically, it bridges the current kind of grass line and the 50-foot line, which I think is on Jack's screen share. Jack, do you have that handy?
Yep, coming up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you can see here, yeah, right in here.
Pretty far up, and where the grading would end is short of that 50-foot line anyway. So that's already there, and really wouldn't be. Yeah,
and it's probably
doesn't overlap, I guess.
Yeah, same thing with the 35 by 30-foot area down at the bottom of this screen here. Yeah, that looks like okay.
Right. Yeah. Right. So it's basically maintaining what's already there, cleaning it up, and committing to not mowing it.
Right.
Yep.
Do we need to just touch base on the parameters of the waiver, or are we all set with that?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. Well, the waiver was.
Sorry.
Was entirely to do with the enforcement order. So it's the mitigation that required the waiver, basically.
Okay, got it.
The section that you said was being committed to not be mowed down the road, if you were to sell, would it be pretty obvious not to mow?
I think so. Right now it's pretty shaded. And it's pretty far down there. I mean, this picture doesn't show it, but there's already some trees there. We're proposing putting in some trees to really make that a more formal growth area with the shrubs. So
All right.
I think it would be pretty obvious with the shrubs that it really can't be mowed. But
Some people.
yeah, I have no intention to move or sell for what it's worth. I'm not living there now, and I'm looking forward to moving. So it's going to be a long time before somebody else gets their turn. But I assume when that property passes hands, that all these documents go in a packet of this is what was done. So yes, to answer your question, yes, it'd be pretty obvious. It's going to be landscaped that way.
All right, that was all I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, great. If we are all satisfied, would someone like to make a motion to close this and issue order of conditions?
What was the DUP number?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I wrote it down somewhere, but it's 1,000.
I might have it. Let's see.
204-1012.
Nice job, Jack.
1012.
So I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing and issue an order of conditions for 161 Tadalon Road, DP number 204-1012 with a bylaw
Waiver.
waiver. Sorry, with a bylaw waiver.
Second,
All right, roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Foltz, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
and myself, aye. It's unanimous.
All right,
And
thank
the
you
other
very
question-
much. Oh,
Yeah, the only
go ahead.
other question for the commissioners is, I assume you want to leave the enforcement order open until some of the monitoring has happened. Or you could close out the enforcement order, whatever you want to do.
Don't see a harm of leaving it open, honestly.
I assumed once everything was planted, I'd be showing up again to confirm everything got done. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to all get in this fall. So I obviously I'll chat with Amy about the specifics, but yeah, I would assume springtime we'll have that done.
Okay, great. Best of luck with the planting.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Appreciate it all.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Take
Have a good
care.
night.
Too.
So Andrew, so now we're gonna go ahead and open the 805, which is a continued public hearing, and I am going to recuse myself. So I'm gonna see if I can move myself over.
Absolutely.
Can't do myself apparently.
Oh,
Oh, no. Nope. That's weird. I can move
And I
everybody else
can't.
over.
I can't do it to you. That doesn't make sense because I should be able to block you if you start creating problems.
that's strange. Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, Sarah, maybe you could just turn off your video and mute yourself. And
All right, so I'm gonna hold on one second.
Oh, I know how to do this,
You do?
I think. Change role to attendee. There you go.
all right, so we'll go ahead and open up the continued public hearing, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 550 Newtown Road, Mass DEP file number 204, to be determined. Approval of wetland resource area delineation. Is there anybody here to speak to this application tonight?
Yes. Good evening. For the record, Greg Hockmuth from Epsilon Associates, here representing the applicant for the ANRAD file for 550 Newtown Road.
Good evening, Greg.
Good evening. This is our second public hearing. We continued the last public hearing to allow time for a site visit, which we had, and just about the entire commission came, and we had a very difficult walk through the woods, but we were able to review the resource area boundaries. And if I could share my screen, I can bring everybody up to speed on what's transpired since the last hearing. So, can everybody see the plan there?
Yes.
All right. So the green line is the bordering vegetated wetland boundary that we're asking the commission to approve. And that is essentially the line that we walked during the site visit. You may recall that there were some abutters at the last hearing that were discussing an impoundment behind their property, and how when they purchased the property, they were told that it wasn't a jurisdictional, well, there was no buffer zone on their property, and And I was adamant that it was a jurisdictional resource area. I showed the commission during the site visit. It was very thick. That's the area that you see with this little purple finger here. That's where the wetland line was on the prior plan. What we've learned since the site visit, thanks to Amy and her staff, is that actually in 2003, there was a notice of intent filing for this exact property, 550 Newtown Road. And what prompted the filing was they were before the planning board, and the planning board asked them to do some drainage improvements. And the plan that went along with this notice of intent application was this plan here. And I'll give you a moment just to get your bearings. But this building that you see is the building on top of the hill that we parked behind on the site visit. And you can see this ridge was built along the slope, and they constructed an infiltration basin in the area that the abutters were describing impoundment. And this was done in 2003, so post 1996, after the stormwater management standards. So then the question became, even though this hasn't been maintained since I think around 2013, because we found an as-built plan. So for about 10 years, it hasn't been maintained. Is it a jurisdictional resource area or not? Because in accordance with the regulations, a stormwater management area that was constructed in accordance with the stormwater management standards, it's not a jurisdictional resource area, and it doesn't have a buffer zone. But I don't think it's as black and white with this property, and I'll explain why. Lack of maintenance for one, and it wasn't quite built per plan. The spillway that separates this infiltration basin from the adjacent BVW, it's a little low in my opinion. So we reached out to DEP and we described the situation to them, and it was kind of an odd request because, you know, a wetland line further from my client's property would benefit them. But a wetland line closer to the abutters property would not benefit them. And that's exactly what the abutters were concerned with at the last meeting. So I explained to DEP, you know, this is kind of a gray area. We just want to get it right. We're going back to the commission. What is your take on this? And I pointed out some of the flaws with the install. I showed them the notice of intent, the approved plan, and the as-built. So they had all the materials. And DEP said that they would not deem this infiltration basin a jurisdictional wetland resource area. So the abutters were correct. We've since revised the plan to add 2 wetland flags. I'm just going to go back to that revised plan. We've eliminated the section in purple, and we added 2 wetland flags on the back side of the berm. I guess it would be on the wetland side of that berm that separates the basin from the BVW that we walked. The surveyor added those flags to the plan, put a revision date on, and as a result, the buffer zones and everything were revised as well. So the revised plan does not include this purple line. I only added the purple line so the commission could see roughly where the infiltration basin was. But what we also did was we included information that we discussed at the last meeting about 2 intermittent streams that would impact, I'll call it the buildable portions of the property. Most of this property is wet, but the upland areas where the building are, there were 2 streams that had the potential to cast a 200-foot riverfront area on the property. We explained at the last meeting why they didn't meet the definition of a perennial stream per the regulations. And the commission simply asked us to include our stream stats information and a paragraph explaining what we discussed at the last meeting, which we did. So we've now got a revised plan that gets the wetland boundary correct. And we've submitted the information that proves that the 2 intermittent streams are in fact intermittent and don't meet the definition of perennial. Late this afternoon, we received a DEP file number. So I believe we have everything needed for the commission to close and hopefully issue an ORAD for this portion of the property.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. Do any commissioners want to share what they observed on the site walk, or any other questions or comments on the ANRAD?
I'm curious on the map. I know the answer to my question, but where that purple line is, why you didn't just make the wetlands be the purple line, which is a little bit higher up for more protection.
Well, that's where I had it.
But you lowered it, which wouldn't it make more sense to keep it at the higher level?
Well, that was what I described, the question that we had for DEP.
Sure.
And you may recall that the Lewises, the abutters, were adamant that the depression was not a jurisdictional wetland resource area. And I told them they were wrong. But after talking to DEP, they were right, based on DEP's interpretation of the regulations and what was built. I was shocked to see a notice of intent application in 2003 with an infiltration basin design that complied with the stormwater management standards. When you walk behind that house today, it's difficult to see the ground. And I think 10 years ago, it probably looked a lot different. And that's what I'm sure the Lewises were remembering when they looked into their backyard and saw an infiltration basin.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, you made a good point there, Greg, where it was great to see that this was designed following the appropriate regulations and whatnot. But if you're telling me now that it's not meeting those regulations, and this probably has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight, but something tells me that there's a lot of work that needs to be done at that site outside of this ANRAD to get it back into what they had submitted.
Yeah, so really good point. And that was a question that I know Amy and I had chatted a little bit about, and I actually mentioned to DEP. I said, look, at some point, somebody should really get a hold of that infiltration basin, clean it up in accordance with the approved operation and maintenance plan, and start maintaining it as it's supposed to be maintained so that it does function. Yeah. And I had a call last week with my client who's out of Florida. And we had about an hour Zoom call to lay all this out and explain it and show them the plans and go through the O&M. They're fully prepared to do whatever needs to be done to get that infiltration basin up and running again. And then we talked about the best mechanism to make that happen. It certainly wouldn't be the ANRAD. But in my opinion, there's two options. If a notice of intent is filed for additional work on this property, I think that would be the perfect time for the commission to insist and ask for that infiltration basin to be maintained and brought back up to standards. And if for some reason something happens out here that's outside the commission's jurisdiction, I think the commission would be within their rights to issue a friendly enforcement order, which would allow the maintenance of this infiltration basin with a little oversight. That would give the commission the opportunity to require erosion controls, a pre-construction meeting, everything that you'd see with a typical project in your jurisdiction, just so you don't see somebody going down here with a small track excavator and making a mess. To me, I think those are probably the best two options.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I appreciate you having that conversation so that, if it's you or whoever is in blindsided when they present a project in front of us and we come back with that, immediately, because it's, as butters have mentioned, it clearly has not been functioning the way that it should have been for the past 10 years.
Yep.
Knowing that it's not functioning, why wouldn't it just be repaired now? Why would it wait for any other action to occur?
Well, I think in order to work that close to the BVW, I think the commission would, they'd need some sort of a mechanism to allow that maintenance, but you do bring up a good point. There's an O&M, so I think technically somebody would have the right to keep up with that O&M, but where this has been about 10 plus years,
right,
there's small trees growing in this.
That's exactly where I was going, right? Like O&M is O&M, but I think we're well beyond performing O&M at this point. It's basically going to be rebuilding. It's
exactly.
And the access will be interesting.
Exactly, right. Which I'm sure was fine 10, 12, 15 years ago. If they would have kept up with the O&M, this wouldn't have been an issue. But
are there other things that are going to fall out of this? Is that be like setting dominoes going?
No, because I don't know when the building was constructed, but the building's pretty old, and that's been a commercial / industrial building for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the planning board simply said, look, I don't even know what they were doing or why they were before the planning board, but the planning board said, hey, can you do something? Because there were just catch basins, 2 catch basins that were just shooting out into the hill. And all that untreated stormwater was going down the hill. So I read through the notice of intent, and I think the engineer did a really good job. They created a berm instead of a swale. And the berm does 2 things. It captures some of the discharge from those catch basins, but it also captures the sheet flow coming off that parking lot, puts it up against the berm, and funnels it down into that infiltration basin. So it's better than what was there, but certainly not what would have been built by today's stormwater management standards if this was raw land and they were building a brand new building. So yeah, I do think you need some oversight, and whether it's an enforcement order or part of an NOI that comes in, I do think they'll be able to get down there with something small. Hopefully they just have to scrape the top a little bit. And then once it's evident and visible and up and running again, it would be part of whatever the O&M is moving forward for the entire property.
I'm not sure I understand the answer. Are we saying that it can be? I personally think it should be repaired now, but are we saying that it cannot be done now? And I'm not concerned about other trees growing it and that and all that. If it's not been maintained, and because of that, maybe it even needs to be rebuilt, that's not our problem. That's the problem of the folks that didn't maintain it.
Right. So a couple of things I'd like to say to that, if it's okay. My clients didn't own the property until fairly recently. So I think that it hasn't been maintained for a long, long time. They didn't even know it was there. They do now, and they're fully prepared to maintain it. But I don't think the maintenance of that infiltration basin should hold up the issuance of an ORAD. I think the wetland line is the wetland line. And what happens after the ORAD is issued is up to the commission. And the commission could say, well, geez, we want this done right away. And if that's the case, then I think an enforcement order is probably the route to go, and not wait to see what happens out here and to see if they file a notice of intent. Okay. Enforcement orders can be friendly. In this case, I think it's a good start. And if the commission meets any resistance or you don't like what's happening, you can ratify that enforcement order to require whatever you want at that point. And that could be a separate filing. And
thank you. That's where I was headed with my thinking, is that it's one of those, I didn't own the property. Now I know the problem exists. I do own the property. It's my problem, if you will. No different than any of us, that if some bad thing was found on our property, it's now our problem. So yeah, I don't know how, Andrew and Amy, I don't know how this should proceed from that perspective, but
yeah, in terms of issuing an ORAD, how do the commissioners feel about that kind of holding up the ORAD? Do we want to issue that and then perhaps follow up with an enforcement order, a friendly enforcement order, to kind of get things back on the right track? Or is this something that the applicant can pursue through maybe some other means a little further down the road?
I will also throw out that it's a possibility, if they do redevelop a site, that basin might get abandoned. In which case you don't want them mucking around down there.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say, Amy. But Ted's point, we don't know when that's going to happen, right? So
exactly.
Maybe that's enough to light a candle under the owner to push forward with whatever they might have planned to, or they come in front of us and say, hey, within 8 months, we're going to be in front of you with the potential, with our project, with our plan. Right. So I think that might be a better way to go. We have that conversation with the owner and say, hey, this is what we're looking at. We got to come to some sort of agreement here. Here are the options, right? You maintain it now, or if you're saying you're going to come and do some additional work out there with a new plan within a year or so, then we are comfortable holding off. I'm not. I don't know. I probably shouldn't have brought it up. This isn't. I feel bad because we're here for the ORAD. I have no issues with the ORAD. That is what it is now. We walk that line. I'm fine with that. I don't think an EO is quite necessary as long as we keep the conversation open. If we have that conversation and then it comes to light that it could be years before they're going to do work out of this project, then I'm comfortable issuing that. But.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners before we open things up to the public?
I will also say the DEP file number did come in, and their main comment was that this ORAD would probably only be approving the bordering vegetated wetland line, and not the riverfront area. And I can't remember, Greg, you had the BLSF line in there, didn't you?
Yeah, the BLSF line's on the plan, and it's just a zone A, so it's the graphic depiction from FEMA maps, but the surveyor put that on the plan and stamped the plan. So
that's inside the wetland line. Is that correct?
It's inside the wetland line by probably almost 250 feet.
Yeah. So I would recommend if the commission does approve it, that there's maybe a finding that those two intermittent streams are not perennial, but they haven't actually been mapped, so we don't know where the banks are and all that stuff. So.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions before we open things up to the audience? All right, hearing none. If anybody in the panel or any attendees would like to ask a question or make a comment, if you could please raise your hand in the in that option. Okay, I am seeing no hands. I'll give it one more second just in case. All right. So there's no comments or questions from the audience. How would the commissioners like to move forward tonight? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the ORAD? With the two findings for the perennial streams?
Sure. What was the DEP number, Amy?
204-2013 or 1013.
1013. All right. I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing and issue the ORAD for 550 Newtown Road, Mass DP number 204. I already forgot it. 1020. What'd you say? Sorry.
204-1013.
1013. Sorry. 1013. With the findings that the perennial streams located. They're not considered perennial streams on the site.
So the ORAD would not include bank or riverfront area or land underwater. So it'd just be a finding.
Right, as Amy said.
All right, do we have a second?
A second.
All right, perfect. We'll do a roll call vote. Kyle?
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
Ed?
Ed Schultz, aye.
And myself, aye. And Sarah is abstaining or recused, rather.
So with regard to the basin, would you like me to just put something in my calendar that in 6 months we check in if nothing's been filed and start talking about whether or not you want to enforce an order?
I'd say we do it sooner than that. I say we reach out and say, here's what the board's thinking. We don't want to see it now. Yeah, I agree. I say, but so if they come back and say, yeah, within 6 months we're going to present you the filing, then that's a different story. But if they have no immediate plans, then I assume there's some sort of plan going on if they're pushing forward with this ORAD. But
I don't think they'll be surprised to see something from the commission, and I think they'll be very open and honest with what their intention is. And they'll tell you, well, geez, yeah, we're going to stay out of the buffer zone. And if that's the answer, I think it needs to be fixed right away.
Yeah, because that's the danger, right? If they decide to do work that stays out of any sort of resource area or buffer zones, then we lose them. We don't see it again. So,
in fact, when we were talking, they said, geez, we weren't aware of that. I wonder if we can somehow, subtract a certain percentage of whatever they were calculating up on the hill now that they know that some of that stormwater is already going somewhere. So I think the wheels were already turning.
Gotcha.
Perfect.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Greg. And we'll look forward to meeting with your clients hopefully soon and getting that taken care of.
Thank you very much, everyone. This one
Thanks,
was a
Greg.
little confusing.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
You too.
You too. Thank you. All right. So we'll bring Sarah back over.
And I'm having a trouble promoting Matt. Nope, there. No, Matt. Matt, you should at least be able to talk if you want to unmute yourself. Oh, there you go. Or did you leave?
No, I'm here.
Okay, good. Okay.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, guys. So first of all, I just want to let you guys know I did go out and I delineated the wetland on site. And it definitely does appear that the alteration was within 50 feet. It did not fill wetlands, but it did come as close as like 25 feet in the new section of fill. There was older sections of fill that apparently predated.
Could I ask just a procedural question? Sarah and all the others, you had announced, the what was being done, the continued discussion, blah, blah, whatever. Is that a quote unquote requirement? Is that just how you've been doing it? And the reason I'm asking is because someone coming into the video might not realize that Matt was talking to the 15 Powers Road.
Yeah, Ed, typically we announce it. Sorry, that kind of went by us here.
Sorry, guys. I
Sarah,
pulled the trigger too soon.
Did you want to take over?
I'm back, so I'm happy to go ahead. That's kind of a weird transition when you go from one, all of a sudden you're like in Never Land, and then all of a sudden you're here. So let's go ahead, back up just a second. It's 8:54. We're going to open the 8:10 continued discussion and enforcement order. 15 Powers Road, which is discussing unpermitted grading and fill in the buffer zone. And then Matt, if you can introduce yourself formally, that would be great.
Okay, hi, Matt Morrow, Morrow Environmental Consulting. I am a professional wetland scientist and an environmental consultant. I'm here representing the property owner of 15 Powers Road. Again, my apologies for pulling the trigger on my spiel too soon. So essentially what happened was on October 11th, which I believe was a Friday, I went out with a trainee in my company and I did a delineation on site, tied up the flags, basically heading around the backyard flat area where the wetland was. What I found was that there was no filling of wetland. What I did find was that there was work as close as 25 feet, maybe just a little less, like 24.8 in the new section of fill. It looks like there was older sections of fill that predated his purchasing of the house, which I'm sure you guys spotted while you were out there. It's got some very old vegetative growth. That's part of the backyard, goes within about 17 feet to the wetland at the closest point. I am talking to the property owner about getting survey work done. I have to talk to Kirk from Civil. There is some cleanup work taking place on site. There was material that he was storing on site, little trucks, some containers. He's removing those off site as we speak. That should be completed like fairly soon. I lost a little time last week working on this because I was in a car accident. So I was kind of thrown around my car a little bit. So I was down with some bumps and bruises last week and actually just started getting back into the swing of things yesterday.
Well, we're glad you're okay, and we're glad to have you back.
Thank you. That's basically where I am at the moment. I can confirm that there was no wetland that was disturbed. I can confirm that the fill was within 50 feet. And I'm also going to be working on a restorative action plan. My question to you is, do you want the restoration plan filed as an NOI? Do you want to do it under enforcement? I'll do it either way you want.
Wouldn't it be filed, Sarah, as part of the enforcement order?
We already have the enforcement order going, right?
Yeah, I'd rather stay on that path, but Amy, I defer to your knowledge on that.
I would say it depends what the restoration is going to be. If it's basically taking out all the driveway or whatever fill that was in the 100-foot buffer zone, they can do it on the enforcement order. If they want to, get permission to leave some of the driveway in or whatever, then that should be a notice of intent.
Okay, that kind of confirms what I thought. Thank you.
So Matt, so we're trying to keep this on track. We meet again on November 12th, and we set some pretty, I think, low bar hurdles that the applicant had to attain. Where are we going to be come the 12th?
Well, my goal is for the 12th to have at least a draft restoration plan for discussion, a draft set of prints showing the restoration. So something on an actual plan. So I have some conference calls set up with my client, Kirk, to see what we can do, because Kirk drew the last plan, so he has the data. And I'm trying to minimize my client's expenses as much as possible.
Right.
There is probably going to have to be additional topo shot in the meantime.
Right. Can you walk us through what has actually been removed? And as of the 12th, are we going to have good faith effort that all those things are going to be removed by then?
So my client has like a sideline of work where he purchases and sells like container pods. He had those on site. He's removed those. There were some old vehicles. One of them has been removed. Any vehicle that's not registered and not part of his personal use of the property, in other words, anything unregistered, is going to be removed from the property. And any other detritus by the time of the next meeting will definitely be removed, if not sooner. I can keep Amy up to date on that progress in between meetings if you so want me to. I don't have a problem doing that at all.
I think it's helpful to bring in images to be able to share with the commission, like the before and afters from different angles.
Sure. Okay, I can do that.
Are we addressing any of the erosion concerns? I know it's desperately dry and we haven't had rain, but we were out there on site and we could see the scour marks coming down the driveway, exiting to the right down the steep bank. Or if we happen to get, I'm just afraid that where it's so dry that if we do get rain, it's just gonna just go right on by and not infiltrate.
Okay, I'm just making a note here. I haven't done anything about that yet. Like I said,
Okay.
I kind of got sideswiped out of.
Yeah, just if you could take a peek at it, that would be great. And
I know exactly where you're talking about, so I'll have that done by the end of the week.
Okay. And it may just be adding some erosion control up top. Okay.
And it also, I assume, might be worth Tim and or I walking the site with Matt sometime just before the 12th.
Yep, that'd be great. Commissioners, anybody have any questions for Matt?
Just like if you're feeling better.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate
Sorry to
that.
keep you waiting so long. Thank you. Have a good evening.
No worries. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Take care.
It's now 9:00. We're gonna open the 8:15 discussion. 151 Taylor groundwater sampling results. Mass DEP 204-0906 and 204-0917.
Hello, I'm Flora, and I also have John Packman with me here. We're both from GZA. And I will share my screen just to show the site. Share screen.
Before we do that, it's John Packman here. Are there any specific questions or concerns that you have that you would like us to talk about tonight?
Any trends that you've seen would be great.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, so very briefly, this is the site 151 to 153 Taylor Street. Due to the proximity of the warehouse and parking lots to wetlands, we put in 4 monitoring wells, 4 groundwater monitoring wells. There's GZ1 here, GZ2, GZ3, and GZ4. And as you can see from the blue contour lines, groundwater generally flows down gradient this way, and then it's generally pretty flat around here again because it's mostly wetland, but the regional groundwater flow goes kind of northward along Beaver Brook in this area. So the de-icing service provider for the tenant did implement a salt reduction plan with their de-icing program last year. And based on the data that they provided to us, they used about 44% less sodium chloride. So we did see that in the monitoring data for the past couple quarters, where generally it has decreased. But there are still some concentrations above the monitoring criteria that were set. And just as a brief reminder, so the data, the criteria are basically based on an initial baseline monitoring round that we conducted in 2021. And so the yellow highlighting indicates concentrations that are above 25% increase above the corresponding baseline. So we just, our last round was done in September, so we're comparing against September 2021. So it is more than 25% above that. This is for GZ1, that monitoring well right near the large parking lot. Bold values indicate value that's above 15% greater than the prior season. So the prior corresponding season would be September 2023 in this case. So those are the values for GZ1. GZ2 is kind of on the other side of the very large parking lot. For this one, we are seeing more noticeable reductions in sodium chloride concentrations. GZ3 is off the driveway, kind of to the southeast of the warehouse building. And then GZ4, we weren't able to collect a sample this past quarter. That one is the upgradient well located off Monarch Drive.
And why couldn't you
because the water table was below the bottom of the well.
Yeah, we're seeing very low groundwater levels because of drought conditions.
Yeah.
Great.
Can you please go back to the view that shows the locations of the wells, please?
Sure. So here we have GZ1. This is GZ2. GZ3 is down here off the corner of the driveway, and GZ4 is uphill next to Monarch Drive.
Yeah, GZ4 is actually installed up on Monarch Drive.
Yeah. Can you go back to well 1, please? And can you reference that to where your salt shed is?
Yes. Okay. So actually, let's point out the salt shed. Salt shed is right about here.
And where's GZ1?
Right there.
And what's been the increase percentage-wise since the installation of the well to now testing?
So initial baseline values were around 10. It's currently around 100, 200.
Yeah, you are correct for pointing that out.
Yeah.
What we've seen is with the reduction in the salt usage, what happened was the contractor switched from using largely bulk, I'm sorry, I should move into the camera, I guess, largely bulk salt product, sodium chloride. They, at our request, they changed it from using, to using a brine. So what they're doing is they're spraying on a salt brine prior to snow events, icing events. And what that does is that it pre-treats the roads and allows them to use less salt on a net level. And I don't know if you showed it already, but the net effect is where they use about 40%, actually more than 40% less salt last season than they had prior. So that's a good thing. And by and large, it's worked out well. If you look at the numbers for 3 of the 4 wells, the concentrations have generally dropped and things look better. But you are right. Number 1 is being persistent and continues to be high. It is the one that's furthest downgraded and closest to the salt shed. You're right.
So a couple points of interest. I have always disliked having that shed there. And we did not have a lot of snow this winter. I mean, maybe they did at Amazon. I didn't have it across town. So we didn't really have to use that much. And still, we're in the fall months and you have leaching from your sheds and you still have storage of open packed containers in your parking lot. So I would requestfully talk to the commissioners that this shed either has to be totally disbanded or moved or put somewhere else. But I believe that there's a direct correlation with what's going on here, because that shed was never there. And now that it's there, you still have open storage of your salt products as well.
Well, the shed has a roof to it, but I understand what you're saying, and
When was the
certainly.
last time you were out, sir?
Oh, I get photos from the folks that go out there,
So
yeah.
did they show you where you can
Yes.
see where there's staining of where it's leaving? It's
I-
concrete, it's concrete blocks.
Yeah.
It's not
yeah.
as though it's in a, whether we're talking pervious, impervious, you're leaching and it's literally leaving from there and going right out.
I can't argue with that. I.
I'm not trying to argue, I'm trying to find a solution.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have discussed this with the property owner and they have also talked with the tenant.
yeah, Tim's on the line, so I don't know if
So-
Tim wants to chime in.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that the commissioners were at a point where, at what point, we've got a 200% increase. Well, when do we stop? 500, 800? And what happens if this is a snow event year?
Sure,
or the
can you,
contractor
can you
fails.
bring Tim into the conversation here? I don't know if he's still muted or not. Tim Irvin is on the call.
So meanwhile, while
I'm
we're
allowing him to, he's
let's
promoted.
have the commissioners weigh in with any questions that they might
Sure.
have, or observations.
Yeah, Sarah, I think you're right. Honestly, I don't even care that it's the salt shed or what. It's just looking at a snapshot of this data, we can clearly see that there's something going on at GZ1, right? Which also happens to be the closest well to Beaverbrook. So, yeah, I think we're, again, if it's a salt shed, easy fix, or should be an easy fix, regardless of what it is. This, looking at these tables, the data they've been providing, it warrants investigation and some sort of remediation, fixing why we've seen such a large drastic spike. So I'm fully on board with having the tenant or the building owner here try to rectify
When
this.
was the last time we had, Amy, the last time that, do we get these numbers, I'm assuming, every time there's monitoring quarterly?
Yeah, we get
Really,
them
yeah.
quarterly.
And the water department gets them as well?
Yes.
And it's been how long since they've all come in to have this meeting?
It's been yearly, right?
years.
It had been yearly.
Yeah, I think it's been
I think
about
that
yearly.
GZA's folks can, yeah.
Okay.
Because we had requested, I think it was a 3-year monitoring cycle, and now I'm getting nervous that we're probably about to say that this is the end of our monitoring, but I think we're more at the start of our monitoring again here. This is.
Well, and I think that's something you have to bring up because it's under our jurisdiction that you can really work with this and say it's going to continue, or there has to be some action plan. I'm really shocked by these numbers.
I had one other question. If you can bring the picture up of the building again, or slide up to it, whatever. I didn't see any monitoring wells on the bottom, if you will, where it says former property boundary down in that direction. I was just surprised that we've got wells in many other places, but there's a whole huge section there that's not being monitored.
It's not their property.
Is that what it is?
I don't, the former property boundary there that I see.
Yeah, no, I don't mean all the way down there. I was just using that as a visual that, there is like a V-shaped boundary.
I believe we gave that land to you guys, to the town.
I'm sorry?
We basically gave that land to the town.
Right.
Yeah.
I think these wells were done in tandem with the water department, the locations.
I was just curious why we weren't monitoring that side of the.
It could be that the water department is monitoring, but this particular project is under our jurisdiction.
Sure.
Further down and in the picturette from GZ3 is their detention basin, and it's all we left that to stay as much tree cover as possible.
Yeah. But that's way over. Well, I wasn't around when this was all developed, so I shouldn't probably be asking.
No, feel free. Yep.
It just seemed to me that the V or the point of that black line, it kind of looks a little like a V that, we'd want to know right there. Thank you.
Yeah.
That, we'd want to know what's going on in that
That
side.
area
This
is
is the,
hydraulically side gradient, if not up gradient of the site. As Flora pointed out, groundwater flow is to the northeast. So it flows towards Beaver Brook, and then it takes a turn to the top of the paper, towards the culvert of Beaver Brook that goes under the road there, under Route 2. So it actually turns. And so that area is actually hydraulically up gradient. And I think that's what the commission thought of when they specified those well locations at the beginning of the project. So the locations are strategically placed to be downgrading, hydraulically downgradient of the majority of the site.
All right, thank you. That explains.
Is there any data that is available from the new well site? That's the project below where approximate location of storage shed is?
Across the street, right?
Yeah.
Across the street from Monarch Drive.
No, it's off the end of the parking lot, isn't it?
Yes.
You mean the new well that the water department is exploring?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I thought the figure I had showed it on the other side of the street.
It's off the parking lot.
Okay.
It's near that V.
Right. It's kind of right above where that former
Okay,
property
maybe that's a
boundary
different
next
well
box
than the
is.
one I'm thinking of. Okay.
I just wonder if there's any data the water department has.
I think
that
we've
would show
asked
us
them
what's
that in the
going on.
past. Do you
Yeah.
remember, Amy? We have asked them that, Michael.
Yeah, and I literally just said,
Flora, we asked them for their data recently because we've been collaborating with them for them to use our wells as monitoring points for their explorations. And they sent Flora a set of, specific pages of their report. They didn't send us all of it, and that's something that I think you followed up with for.
Yeah.
We would like to see the entire report so we can see those pages in context. Because right now it's hard to understand exactly what they did and what those pages indicate. So that's something that would be interesting to look at.
Yeah, I mean, what they sent was pumping test data, which doesn't tell us
But-
what's in the
Yeah,
water.
that's really all they've done.
Part
I'm
of
not
it,
sure.
and it's not the complete.
Okay, so
test.
let's clarify. So the commission will do a formal request of data on that as in the butter to get
Thank
that,
you.
and we'll share that with you.
And you'll share that with us? Thank you.
So going forward, how are we going to rectify this problem?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll do my best to speak to that. So Amazon does hold the snow removal contract directly with their vendors. We are the owner of the property. We do not hold the contract. That being said, Amazon has tried to be a good partner with us. We've conveyed, our need to report these samples and these readings to the town. We've tried to curb Amazon last year by using the brine solution that John alluded to, incurred increased costs. That's a more expensive application than just salting. So we'll continue to work with them. I think just so everybody's aware, I was just notified that Amazon is changing the snow removal contractor, which was Brightview, to a new contractor this year. This is something that Amazon does on a national accounts type of basis. I have not been informed who's going to be the snow removal provider for the upcoming snow season. I've asked for that information as soon as it's made available. So I think, once we get in touch with the new snow removal vendor, we can ask them to move the location of the salt shed. We can certainly ask that I think one option is no salt shed on the site, that they haul in whatever salt is needed for de-icing and snow removal during events. I can't promise that they're going to agree to that. It's more costly. It's not as, from a time management perspective, it's nice to have your material on site for these events, but we can certainly request that. Beyond that, I think, John alluded some of the numbers are coming down, going in the right direction at this point from previous quarters, previous seasons. So we're hoping to try to continue that kind of momentum in the right direction. But I do agree that we can explore and encourage Amazon to either not have a salt shed on site or move it to a different location. I think those are some obvious things and some potentially helpful kind of measures that we can take to try to improve these results. Beyond that, I think it's just trying to use best practices for the snow removal. Obviously, we need to keep a safe, secure site for the employees here, but also be cognizant of, these test results in these readings.
How is moving the shed somewhere else on this lot, I presume, going to be any different than where it is now?
Well, to your point, maybe moving it could potentially show increased results at another well site as opposed to
That's
GC.
what
I'll give you that. I think maybe in moving it, we would try to improve the containment of the shed as well. I mean, if you guys go to any site, salt sheds are not permanent structures that are completely weatherproof. I've never seen one like that. They need to drive their loaders into these to pull the salt out of it. This is a pretty typical, but also higher end type of salt containment area or structure that you'll see, but agreed that it does leach out. It's not completely impervious to the weather. So we can ask, for the moon here, and I think we will. What we end up agreeing to, or what the final solution here is, still somewhat to be determined, considering I don't even know who's going to be the actual vendor on site for the upcoming season yet.
So I guess that doesn't give us the warm fuzzies about the fact that this is October and you don't know who's going to be plowing maybe in November. I would propose to the commission that we increase monitoring to monthly at this point until we have these questions rectified.
I'd agree with that.
What do you mean by monitoring?
To pull data on those wells to see if they are, as they say, going down or if they're going to go up. And I recognize that we're in a drought right now.
I mean,
I certainly understand your objectives. I think that we may see continued trends as we mentioned for the 3 of the 4 wells. I'm not sure we're going to see that with number 1 because that we haven't really seen. We've seen pretty steady concentrations as you saw and mentioned. I'm not sure what the added resolution of monthly sampling does for us on a technical and protective basis, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Gives us a better picture of trends.
But the groundwater in that area is so flat and stagnant that you're not gonna. It's not a long enough time to see a change.
Can we go back to the original data for, let's use 1 as an example? Please.
Every 3 months.
I might also note here, guys, that Amazon didn't even occupy this site until Q4 of 2022. So the first 2 readings here, and really even the third, potentially, being at the end of December, I don't have historical weather data for 2021. This wasn't even a site that was being used when kind of the baseline readings were taken. And I think that needs to be considered, considering this is a site that now is being used.
So you said Q4?
Yeah, their occupancy was really August of 2021. So 6/5, 9/13, there was no salting, no applications that had been done on this lot prior to that.
And those numbers are pretty low.
Well, of course they are, yeah.
Yeah, but you're making the case though. The numbers after they moved in have been progressively higher for the most part anyway. And some are very high, 198, 202, 169.
Well, I think you're you're looking at after the winter, the June for 133 and 23 was a mild winter.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Is this concentration going to be a function of whether, we're in a drought or have lower than normal rainfall? I mean, I'm trying to understand how going from April to June, the number goes up so dramatically and holds steady. And we've definitely been low on rain lately, but is that partly an explanation, or am I just making stuff up?
No, no, you're not. You're right on the money there. I mean, there are variables. One variable is the amount of salt that's applied. That is the source term. The other variable is, as you pointed out, the amount of water that is available to spread this, and that's precipitation. And then with all that in the winter months, the added variable is that if it's colder and there's more icing and more snow, then more salt is needed. So it's very complicated in that there's a lot of variables. And so you're right, and the reality is, yeah, as Tim pointed out, the first numbers were very low because there was no activity at the site, and we all know that if you apply salt to a pavement, you're going to end up with salt runoff. It occurs next to every road in the country in cold weather climates. So that's what we're seeing. So then it's a matter of, can we control that, which is what they're trying to do with the use of the brine, and it is working. Is it gonna change it overnight? I don't know. I don't think so. But we've only gone through one winter so far with the brine. And I'm not arguing one way or the other. The only thing I do want to say is that I don't know that added resolution of monthly monitoring is going to do much in terms of giving insight to the problem. Kyle is dead on, as you'd expect, in that area of the site where closest to the wetlands, which means that the hydraulic gradient in that area is almost flat. That's why we can't even contour that. Flora, if you can bring up that figure again, you will see, and actually show the whole thing with the contours on the other side. Yeah, there you go. You'll see that we carry contours on the parcel that's to the right of the screen because we have enough of a hydraulic gradient there to actually contour it. When you get to the concentration or the groundwater elevations, I should say, on the parcel that's to the left, you see they're almost the same number. They're so close that we can't even contour them. Okay, and it's because that gradient is almost flat because it's all wetland there. So there isn't a lot of gradient. Groundwater flows from high elevation to low elevation. Water flows downhill. So because of that, the groundwater seepage velocity is very low. So you're not going to see a lot of flushing or groundwater movement in the course of a month. So I don't know what you're going to see in that higher resolution other than maybe the transient impacts of an occasional rainstorm that results in some blitz in concentrations because you have a sudden influx of clean water or fresh precipitation water.
So if we can just go back to the brining so in 24 you did the brining. If you look at the stats again, so the brining should have brought the monitoring numbers down in the spring of 24 from the spring of 23, correct? But for well one,
it helps out, but remember there's a contaminant load already in the ground, so it's not going to flush out overnight.
Well, it wasn't overnight; it was a year.
Oh yeah, but groundwater flows very slowly, so
it was a relative comment.
Yeah.
So we're talking very relatively, right? Where we have baseline numbers. Can you refresh my memory on what what these numbers actually mean. What kind of thresholds are we approaching? Any sort of like a drinking water standard or a reportable limit or anything like that? Or are we so far below those limits that it's not really a concern? It's becoming a concern to our eyes because we're seeing such a drastic increase.
The regulatory standards, and these standards are primarily secondary standards. And so they're at the top there. You can see the standards say for fluoride is 250. So, we're really not even.
But we were already, if you can scroll down, we were already in the 200s.
Well, we're at 202.
Yeah.
Right. So you're, in essence, getting relatively closer.
I don't argue that. Yeah, that's true. So that's why we went to the brining. We're hoping that continues to improve. But it's only been 1 year.
So you're attributing the higher 202, even though you had mitigation methods of brining, that it was still a fluke, and so it's still going to potentially rise. How long are we flushing? A year, 2 years?
I haven't done those transport calculations, but yeah, something on that order.
So all I say to the commissioners and the applicant is that this has, it's not in my expertise by any means, but this causes concern. And I want to make sure that we're doing everything, whether we need to have someone else come in as a third party to look at this critically, or unbiasedly.
Sure. I think that Tim's suggestion is a good one, in that we work with the tenant to explore options for either removing the salt shed, because you're right, that serves as a chronic source, and it's either removing it or better managing it so that they don't have an excess of salt throughout
So we
the
meet
spring and summer
again. We
months.
meet again on November 12th. I would like for you to come in and hopefully have some type of, I don't know what you want to call it. Let us know what your contractor's going to do, or at least have some type of method going forward. So with your permission, I'd like to have you come in for November 12th. That gives you 3 weeks, if the commission would like.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. I think, yes, that, and for the salt shed portion of it, but are we going to request that the tenant or the applicant in this case continues that quarterly monitoring for another year?
Up to you all. So obviously, as I said, this is not my level of expertise, so I was just trying to see if that was going to be helpful.
Yeah, we want them to continue monitoring, I guess, right? For sure. We need to.
Oh, for sure. That's, I mean, they have to do that. So,
because I think are we at the end here, Amy, of where we?
No, we still have 2 years to go.
Oh, okay.
So it's arguing that we stop monitoring.
Yeah.
I don't think that's.
No. I just wanted to make sure you did continue. I thought that this was the end of it right here. I thought this was our last.
No, not at all. No, we understand where we're at. The only thing I want to comment on the November 12th meeting, and I know this probably doesn't impact you, but I can't be there for the November 12th meeting. I have another commitment for another public meeting in the state. So I would request, if at all possible, because I would like to be there, that we do that at your following meeting so that I can participate.
So commissioners, that's up to you. So you're at November 26th. I guess my question is, if it snows between now and 26, what is the plan? If they have a new contractor that doesn't want to do,
I think we're
that doesn't want to do brining.
We're looking at two different things here. Where, no offense to you, John, but I think this sounds like it's more of a Tim issue, right? Where Tim should be coming back and letting us know where they stand, where the tenant stands with their contractor.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Again, we don't hold the contract. Part of me.
Right, but you have those. You're having those conversations, or you can get that information. Right? I mean,
we work directly with Amazon to encourage them as best we can, and they've been a good partner. Like I said, willing to take on additional costs to try to show improvement here. I sense that that willingness will continue, whether that means moving the salt shed to a different location or eliminating it altogether. we'll have those discussions with their vendor once I learn who it is.
And Laura, we will make a request for the Littleton Water Department to give us some data on the wells as well that we will share with you.
Yeah, if they could share the entire pumping test report that they generated or their contractor generated, that would be great.
I think what we're interested, we'll talk to Amy and I will talk and see what the request will be. Okay, we have to carry on.
Sarah,
Anything else?
one thing, you mentioned the new contractor might not do the brining.
Well, it's up to them, right? Like we've requested that they use best management practices, but
isn't
that was
it up
what
to
we-
us if the salt level's too high to tell them they have to do something to resolve it?
I don't think we can tell them means and methods. We can tell them our concerns and what we're seeing and what we want to see changed in those results, but we can't tell them how to get there.
No, fair point. Okay.
But once you get to, for instance, in that category, once you're at 250, then you're at alarm. So we don't want to get there. All right, thank you. We will see someone on November 12th. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Yep, take care.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, we're now going to do the 820, which is 933, continued discussion enforcement order 0 Ipswich U15-16-0. I know it's later than anticipated. Are they still here? Mark? Promote to panelist. Mr. Gallagher, I see that you're on. Do you want to chat?
Or fell asleep.
Mark, are you on?
All right.
Maybe not.
No, I don't think so. I just
He moved in.
I promoted him and he's got talking permitted.
Oh, there he is.
Why are you not going over?
He may have stepped away also.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't he have to accept being promoted? No. I mean, I have to click accept to be promoted to the main
Yeah.
account.
It keeps saying it failed.
That's because you click not accept. All right, while we're waiting, let's go back to continue administrative discussions. Enforcement order 30 Warren, unpermitted construction of a walkway within the buffer zone and work in rear yard.
Yep, they are done. It took them, I don't know, 2 or 3 days last week. It was Earthworks who did the work, and I think they did a great job. So everything's planted, seeded, stabilized, including the little infiltration areas for the downspouts, and ready to go through the winter.
Okay, good. I'm glad they were able to get that done, and hopefully that seed will take soon as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Parcel review.
Good week for it.
I think we can just kick that down the line.
Okay.
That was pretty much just
like Mattawanaki drawdown.
Just let you know what's happening.
Cool. Okay. The lake must be low with this drought.
Yeah, so they struggle to draw it down anyway, right? What, are you able to get it down?
No, it's definitely dropping.
Okay. Good luck with that. Okay. Budget goals and priorities. That's the land use document, Amy?
Yes. So, what I would ask at this point, because I can't get into work, is if you all could take a look at it and let me know if you have any things that you think should be in the budget, or more particularly any goals and priorities. And then a meeting with Ed and Kyle on the 30th at 6 o'clock. If anybody else wants to join, by all means.
The only thing I didn't see in that, and I'll email this to you as well, it doesn't make any mention of if we got any grants for anything in 2024.
It wouldn't be in the past, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Or-
so
slated for 25 or,
Yeah, they, if they're grants, they wouldn't show up in the budget.
okay,
So there's line items for the, Phragmites control at Cloverdale, and there's a line item for the ADA trail at Cloverdale.
okay. I don't think we had any other discussions. It looks like,
a couple quick questions. Sorry, Sarah. Amy,
Yeah.
where are we meeting for that? Are we meeting at town hall, or is it over Zoom? What do you?
It might be easier if we do it in person, if that works for you guys.
That's fine. Just
Where?
so, at your office.
Yeah, coming in, yeah.
And then Sarah, I was going to ask if I brought up a issue on Tehadawon at our last meeting, and I think Tim said he tried to swing by, but nobody was there. Has anybody gone back out?
Yeah, I've done the same, and I sent Stan an email. I haven't heard back, and frankly, I didn't follow up, so I'll do that tomorrow.
Were you able to see the work that took place, or what had changed?
Yeah, you can see it around the corner. I know there had been looking at the aerials, a patio or something there. I'm not sure how big it was and how big the existing one, the one that's there now is.
Okay.
But clearly work was done.
Yeah.
is everyone going to town meeting?
You should be there.
Yep.
I'm there to support you, Sarah.
Yeah, so historically in the past, when we have things that are put forth by our commission, we all kind of sit together. So that way, if there are questions, so usually like lower right. So is a request. One thing, so Amy and I went through the slide deck, and there has been, and I apologize, I just wanted to bring this up real quick, that we're not, never mind, we'll talk about it later. I lost my train of thought. Anybody have anything else?
Sarah, should we potentially post for town meeting just in case we have to make any decisions on the floor, or do you think we're good with what we have?
It might be easy enough to post if you want. Doesn't mean you have to do anything with it.
It's just a good backup, just in case we have to make any decisions on the floor.
Yep. I agree. So what that means is just prior to the start, that we'll all gather and we open a meeting and close the meeting. Or do we actually leave it open? No, we leave.
Or conversely, you wait until you know if you need it when Article 10 comes up.
We can keep it just rolling through town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll cover us either way.
But then we have to remember to close it.
And that's assuming we have 4 of us there too, right?
Oh,
We can
don't leave without closing it.
Right.
Yes.
So
is there anyone that's not going? Okay.
I just want to make sure we're having this discussion for a reason. If it was only going to be
Right.
3 of us, then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would feel better if we posted it.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'll do it at, when's town meeting start? I don't even know.
7.
All right, so I'll post it for maybe 6:30.
How about
Just in case.
How about 6:45?
Yeah, okay.
And then we'll just meet down front to the right, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
All right. It's 9.
And let me know if you want me there.
Yes.
You
You can come late.
Well,
You can laugh at me.
We can't work without you, Amy.
I'm waiting to see if this will go on the consent agenda. Haha.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? It is 9:42.
We've given up on Mark completely. Sorry. I just
He already left.
He disappeared.
I
Yeah.
was gone completely. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Last roll call. Ed.
Ed Foldside.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Myself, aye. We're adjourned.
See you next
Yeah.
Tuesday.
everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.